Welcome back to Martins and More. My name's Maury Rutch.
And I am Spoon Phillips.
And this episode's brought to you by the Martin 00018. Carrying a distinct vintage-inspired design and updated in 2014 like the D18 a few years before, the redesigned Martin 00018 offers many of the features found in Martin's pre-war era guitars. It's got a beautiful aging toned spruce top married to a solid mahogany back and sides, and the body is edged with black binding, complemented with a polished finish. For more information on the Martin 00018, please visit maurysmusic.com today. Spoon, what do you think about the 00018?
Well, I'm a big fan of the 00018. For those who may not remember, the Martin 000s were pretty much limited to the 00018 and the D28 for many, many, many years, from the 40s on up to the into the 21st century, with occasional 00045 showing up in the 70s and 80s, possibly, I don't remember. But they all had non-scallop bracing. They had 5/16 inch non-scallop bracing. And the 00018 was the first one in the standard series to get the scallop bracing that has appeared in the vintage series. And what a big difference it makes. And it also gets 1/4 inch scallop bracing, which is, in my opinion, is technically OM bracing, but on a short scale 000. It makes it very responsive to light finger, nuanced finger style. And I think I know many people who have the 00018 and really love it, and whether they have big guitars or not, comfortable and classic mahogany Sitka Martin sound.
Well, never mind all that. We have some really important guitars to talk about. Today's episode isn't about mahogany at all. It's about, well, is it about platinum gray? Can we say it that way?
Well, it's about some very special OMs, speaking of OM bracing. And so today is our look at the new Martin models that were announced in late August of 2023 to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the John Mayer signature model, the OM28JM that came out 20 years ago. And these are two special Martin guitars. One of them is the 20th anniversary OMJM, which is based on the current OMJM, and the other is a very special OM45 20th anniversary John Mayer model. And very exciting. And so why did you say we should call them platinum gray?
Well, I think I saw some spec sheet somewhere. Early revisions were fog gray. What the hell is that gray? And I think they eventually landed on platinum gray.
No. People may remember the original John Mayer signature model had special inlays with a special alloy. It wasn't platinum, but it looked like it. And I'm pretty sure it was an aluminum-based alloy that, or aluminium for those of you across the pond, and that is evoked in these new models. For one thing, the OM45 also has some silver trim around the pickguard, which is similar to the trim that was on the old original John Mayer signature model. But this guitar, a lot of people may know this, but John Mayer is one of those artists that really cares about this stuff. And there are a variety of Martin's artists over the years that had signature models who were very interested in being part of the design scheme. Others were very specific about certain things that they wanted to have on it. Others deferred to Dick Boak about, well, he was in charge of that stuff, and and that Dick Boak came up with a lot of the specs, or at least took them through it, and the artist and Dick Boak would make the decision of what wood was used for the top, or all those sorts of things. John Mayer was deeply involved in the design of this OM45, and is cared a lot about the specs and the concept. And I'm not sure, there's probably a lot of stuff I'm not allowed to say, out loud or on the airwaves, but this went through a series of intellectual discussions and and design discussions to come up with this specific top. And so he's very happy with his gray platinum top, or platinum gray burst sort of top. And if you haven't seen it yet, it almost looks like a black and white photo to me of a sunburst top, and I think it's actually really cool looking. But I can definitely see, it's different, and you know what the Martin public is like. There's a lot of people out there that the moment Martin does anything different, they cross their arms and say, I don't like it, I'm against it, and so I'm not surprised that there's some dissenters about these new Mayer models, and I would bet you that 99% of them would have never even considered buying a John Mayer signature model anyway. So they just like to, gripe about things that Martin do that are different.
That's a really good point. I bet you a lot of people that saw these pictures, it isn't like they were going to put their order in if it was a regular color. And I was really trying to be facetious a few minutes ago. I don't hate the color as much as I joked around about it a few moments ago, but I'll be really honest with you because that's why we're here. I'm not a fan of it in pictures, but I am going to wait until we can see these things in person. And even in a video, sometimes you think something's going to look a little bit funny. Maybe a few months ago, there was a 3-week period or so where there was one sole photograph making the rounds on the internet of this really kind of a blurry, low-res copy of a bad photograph, and people were saying, I can't believe Martin would promote a guitar like that. Look at what that looks like. It wasn't Martin's picture, and it wasn't the end result. And I'm glad that more things are coming to light, but I really genuinely look forward to seeing these things in person. But what did you think about that picture?
I never saw it, and as for anything that happened prior to the release of these models, I have to say no comment, because if I start talking about things that I might or might not know that went on behind the scenes in anything related to the custom shop or any of that stuff, I would very quickly no longer have access to that kind of information. So I never saw it. I never heard that. But I'll just say, in any case, I would have no comment.
We're not here to gossip, and it's nothing that we have no intention of bringing anything negative to this conversation. But let's just say it really is fantastic that they got this done in time. I know there were some challenges, and it really looks like, I saw 2 pictures very recently from the Martin side of things. We have access to the Martin pictures that they give the dealers, and there was even one picture where they had the side-by-side, the OMJM 20th and the OM45, and to my eye, they didn't look exactly the same color. And our friend Tim, quickly told me back channel that they are the same color. Might have been a little bit of a photography mishap, but if anybody out there is finding photographs of these guitars side by side and wondering, they are both exactly the same color, the 20th OMJM and the 45. So in case that comes up.
Yeah, they're identical, and that can certainly happen when 2 photographs are taken of 2 different guitars, or when somebody is seeing them on a screen that's not entirely calibrated correctly, for color, all those things add into it. So it's always good to have a caveat of wait till you see it in person. But it is interesting. I do think it's a very unusual look. I think some people are going to find it very cool. In fact, I know a lot of people have found it a very cool look, and I could definitely see, I'm really curious to see what it looks like on stage, because I'm sure he'll be playing it in concert. John's were delivered to him, I guess, the same day that the press release, the same day that on onemans.com that I had posted about it when I was allowed, when the press embargo had been lifted. So that was Friday. I guess it was last Friday. Was it last Friday? 2 Fridays ago? I've been really busy. But at that time, the only 2 guitars that were finished were John's, and they sent them to the artist, and they sent it to Mayer, and and he loved them, and off they went. So they will go ahead with producing these things, and of course you should reach out to your favorite dealer, Maury's Music, and inquire if you're interested in either of these. But so here we've talked about the controversy, and we've talked about here's the new thing, and how when Martin releases something new and different, there's always going to be some sort of whoop to do about it. But let's take a look at these guitars, and let's start with the really cool OM45. Yes, the most noticeable thing about it is this special burst top that is on the gray scale. And I know somebody has pointed out that some electric guitar makers have already done that sort of thing, and basically had some sort of grayscale sunburst, and that could very well be where Mayer got the idea from. Who knows? I never heard one way or the other. But so everybody knows this is a normal OM. It's full gloss, as you would expect, with something of the kind of price tag this comes with. It has the full traditional dovetail neck joint and OM scallop bracing. It's got John's favorite 1 11/16 inch width nut and a low profile. So this is much more similar to the dreadnought necks that were out, long scale dreadnought necks before the reimagined standard series. So the triple O's also had that too, but they were short scale, and as you get up the neck, that really matters. But it's still my favorite neck. It's what's on my guitars these days, and so that that's will make it appealing to some people and not appealing to traditional OM players who want the 1 3/4 inch width neck, of course. And but it does, it has the standard taper, because what people call the high performance taper also has that same 2 1/8 inch width at the 12th fret. The high performance taper is just cheated out at the nut to be 1 3/4 inch. So once you're getting farther up the neck, this will be virtually identical width on the fretboard for people who are used to the standard series necks, except it has the low profile instead of the modified low oval. And what's your opinion about that? You're around different neck shapes more than I am. How do you feel it? What's your opinion of the fact that this has a low profile, and your opinion in general of OMs with these different neck shapes?
I really feel like the low profile and the modified low oval are the two most similar Martin necks in current production. I've never been one of those people who feel proud to say I can really explain to you over the airwaves what a neck feels like. But when I play the low profile and go to a modified V, or if I play the high performance taper modified low oval and go to an authentic, I can tell the difference immediately. And then you compare all these necks to something like an SC13. Put it this way, if they had, for some reason, had to throw one away and they had to make all the low profile necks become modified low oval or vice versa, I don't think I would even notice. So maybe the low profile is a little bit chunkier, but not enough for me to really say it that way.
Yeah, and then the other thing is also the narrower nut width, which definitely matters to some people. John Mayer grew up playing electric guitars, and he had an OM28V for years, but the first thing he said when they came to him for his signature model is, "I love this guitar, but I wish it had a different neck." And so that's, and they came up with the neck that he liked the most, and that's what's on this signature model. For those of you who collect John Mayer models, this is the same neck that you're going to get. The one difference is possibly some people say that it matters that it has a lot more pearl on it, but I'm not one of those people. And it does, it's got a nice style 45 snowflakes, John Mayer signature model on the ebony fretboard, and of course an ebony belly bridge. But it also has a very cool ebony pickguard. And I think that's pretty awesome. And it's ebony pickguard, traditional OM teardrop style pickguard, but it's ebony, and then it has a border of custom shop inlay silver, aka platinum looking inlay around the edge of the pickguard that I think is very attractive. And then, of course, full 45 pearl all the way around the edge of the top, and the fret insula, as I like to call it, the fretboard extension on the top, likewise style 45 pearl. So I was looking so forward to seeing this, and I was very disappointed when they said, "Sorry, we only have John's right now. You'll have to come back some other, come to the factory later on when there's one available for you." So. And I'm looking really forward to seeing what the gray burst and the ebony pickguard with the silver trim edging, and it's not around the edge, it's set in from the edge a little bit, and see what that's like with the color of the pearl. So I wonder if it's going to bring out, like people have been around these kind of abalone inlays, depending on the light. If you're in sunlight, whether you're in a mercury vapor lamp, whether you're in an incandescent lamp, the spectrums of the lights will bring out different colors. I'm curious if the eye will see the silver and gray in the pearl more just by association to the gray top. So I'm really, really curious to see if it makes the color stand out even more. So if it makes all the blues and magentas and reds and greens and the rare yellows that you get out of abalone shell, I'm curious to see if that gray top makes those pop even more. Which I think it might, because if you see a OM42 with the 1935 sunburst, which I think is one of the great looks that Martin ever came up with, that the colors really shine out from the black of the sunburst. So I'm really curious to see what this grayscale burst will do.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know how you feel, but I'm dying to see what it looks like, in person, the real honest-looking rosewood back and sides versus the gray, because in pictures, I think I like the gray a lot more when I can't see the brown against it. And I bet you, I just have a feeling my impression is going to completely do a 180 when I do get to hold these in my own hand. So I'm curious to see what that's going to look like. Not that there was any way to make the back and sides look black and white, but I think the fact that the top looks like it's a black and white photo and the sides don't, I just have to see what that looks like.
I agree. I think it's an arresting look. It looks like, when the very first time I saw it, when I got a picture of it, I thought it was a black and white photo. And because there is no color on the top, and it was shot, it's almost impossible to pick up the colors of abalone in just a normal photograph. Sometimes you have to you can go into Photoshop and you can tell it to bring up the different colors so they come out, if people who know how to do that kind of stuff, just so you get some idea of what it's going to look like in real life. Because most of the color from pearl, and especially mother pearl, which is the argent white stuff that gives off all these colors, is an optical illusion. It's actually happening in your eye, really, and that's why it often doesn't show up in photographs. But anyway, just to remind people, like the other Mayer signature models, this has Engelmann spruce. It's an Engelmann spruce top, and it was certainly worthy of Style 45. And if you're not familiar with Engelmann spruce, in my opinion, it sounds very pretty. When it's brand new, I think it sounds rather simple and very fundamental. But it has a pretty overtone content at the top. But when it starts to age, then you get this really nice aural glow about it. What I call a sort of a soft, like almost a soft filter, if you jump over to visual metaphor, or pastel. That comparing different kinds of painting, I kind of see Adirondack as being acrylic, super realistic, sharp painting, very clear, defined. I see Sitka as being oil painting with that sort of lushness, and I see Engleman as being like pastels or watercolors with the kind of glow that you get. And it takes a little while, just like Adirondack takes time to break in, so does Engleman, before that stuff really becomes noticeable. And when it's topping a lush rosewood, particularly, I think it works really well with mahogany for fingerstyle guitars. But when you get the complexity, that brothy undertone and the more complex overtones that you get out of a rosewood with Engleman, as it ages, then it becomes really super pretty and complex. And this guitar is, in fact, Guatemalan rosewood on the back and sides. And from the looks of it, they picked out some really, really wonderful, beautiful grain for the OM45 edition.
Now, can I ask you, what do you think of the choice to pair Engleman with Guatemalan on this guitar? And can you think of a recent instrument that did that before that you can compare this to?
Oh, that's interesting. It's a good question. There may be some Guatemalan Engleman out there. I'm trying to remember.
I ask you because nothing comes to mind for me.
Yeah, nothing comes to mind for me either. I should have thought to try to look that up. The Guatemalan guitars that I remember Martin coming out with, I remember the first one I think I played was a SC model, a custom shop model, and it was the first GP, Grand Performance made without a cutaway. And that was Guatemalan, and I'm going to say it was European spruce top. And so they've done that. They've done the Swiss or the Swiss or the Italian spruce tops with Guatemalan, but I don't remember them doing it with Engleman. That's a fascinating question. I'm sorry I didn't look it up first, tried to reach out to them about that. I'm a big fan of Guatemalan rosewood. I think compared to the other rosewoods, or people always want to compare everything to Brazilian, it has a darker, inkier cellar to it than a lot of Brazilian. So it's kind of on the, if you have a spectrum of tone woods, and you have Brazilian at the apex of that protractor, of that arc, I would put Guatemalan to the left of it, heading into the darker rosewoods, heading into Amazon, into the Cocobolo, Indian rosewood Cocobolo, all the way over to Macassar ebony. And on the other side, you get lighter and lighter, and you get in. That's where I put the Honduras rosewoods and the Madagascar rosewoods. But it still has some really pretty, colorful overtones that always makes me think of Brazilian rosewood. So it's kind of like the darker side of, I've definitely heard Brazilian rosewood that compares, and it's one of the reasons I put it on my guitar, my TSP model that you guys used to sell, for that reason, particularly when I mix it with Adirondack. So that's why I'm really curious to hear that's mixed with Engelmann. So I would say it probably sounds more like Indian than Madagascar or Honduran in terms of that darkness, but it still has a more complex and more colorful high-end and overtone than typical Indian rosewood sound, to my ear.
Interesting. And I think it might be a good time for a trivia question, and this time the trivia is on you. I'm going to ask a trivia question that even Spoon won't know the answer to until the show is over. Why don't you play along with us? Today's trivia question: what did we forget to do 2 podcasts ago? And part 2, do you think Spoon's going to remember to do it on this show? The answer coming up.
Well, that's going to get me thinking while we continue talking about this fabulous guitar. So you tell me, I gave my pontification on Engelmann and Guatemalan and the potential of the combination. What about you? What do you think about all that?
I've really been looking closely at Engleman lately. I've done a lot of videos in the past 3 or 4 months, especially the past 3 or 4 weeks, actually, of some of these John Mayer clones, we call them here in the shop, where we actually commissioned the Martin Custom Shop to rebuild the original OM28JM, of course, without his signature and without the signature inlays like the aluminum border. Nothing from that original run could be made into a modern guitar, but the meat and bones of the build quality are there. We ordered that guitar both with and without a pickup, and I've played the one without a pickup on some recent videos. We've had a couple come through the shop, so I've tried to listen really closely, both under ear while I'm playing them, but even more so when I make a video, even if it's just a quick thing on our Wednesday program on YouTube, I try to cut those videos into pieces and put them up a few days later. What I'm doing this time, every time I get to that guitar, I really am trying to listen closely. I hear something in the overtones and the sustain on Engleman that's a little bit different, but these guitars are so brand new, and believing in what you're talking about, whereas the Engleman ages and matures, I suspect if the buyers would send these guitars back to us after a few months for another listen, that's when I might really be able to glean what's going on with Engleman. But I have to be honest, as a shop owner who sees almost all Sitka, like day in and day out, for every Engelmann or Adirondack we've seen, there's been 200 Sitka top guitars. So my expertise really doesn't stretch into the Engelmann like I want it to, but knowing this was going to be a topic on today's show, I have been trying to pay more close attention, but I'm even more impressed by the fact that they didn't make this an East Indian guitar, because the OM45 being something you can call a standard, or I should say limited edition now with his signature model, it's one of those things you really can't go and compare it to another one, because there's lots of OM42s, but there aren't any other ways to buy a 45 style instrument these days in production unless you go backwards to an authentic, or there's a D45 modern deluxe, but the 45 way of life, so to speak, just isn't reachable like some other catalog guitars are. If you're going to talk about anything that's a 28 styling or an 18 styling, we have lots of choices. I'm really equally curious about what the Guatemalan's doing here, and I wouldn't be surprised if the last time I saw Guatemalan was your custom that you just mentioned. So this is made of a top I've never seen and a top wood that I'm not very familiar with. And I'm admitting I don't see a lot of Engleman spruce. I see even less Guatemalan rosewood. So this guitar, just on paper, is just such an outlier for me as far as what I'm used to seeing.
Well, I just want to correct you by reminding you that you have seen a Guatemalan rosewood Martin since mine, because they've switched the D28 Authentic to Guatemalan. So you were there the day where we went there to do some videos in the museum, and the D28, maybe I made that, maybe because you didn't show up until later, so maybe I made that video before you got there. But the D28 Authentic is now, 1937 is now Guatemalan rosewood as of this year. So I'm pretty sure you heard that one at least. But hugely different guitar than we're talking about here. It's Adirondack spruce and, gigantic dreadnought sound with the big V neck. But one of the things I will say about comparing Engelmann to Sitka is Sitka has higher headroom. That particularly when it's brand new, when for real big hard strumming, you hit the overdrive. You overdrive the top faster on Engelmann, you don't hit overdrive, but I don't find it as satisfying. You don't get that big fat roar out of Engelmann dreadnought that you get out of a Sitka dreadnought, and it's a different sound. It compresses, and then it becomes more fundamental like, and I just don't feel that you don't get the same roar out of the body, the undertone that I get from Sitka. But most people who like Engelmann don't do that. They don't play that hard. They usually play more laid back, more finesse, very pretty strumming. And I remember there back in the day, so we're going maybe in the 80s, 90s maybe, Martin was arbitrarily putting Engelmann on HD28s, and they would just show up in shops that way. They wouldn't tell anybody. It was just what happened. That batch of wood, that's what was available, and they didn't do it on the 28s, but they did it on the HD28s, and they may have done them on the D41s. I don't remember, but. But and I remember about that same time, Dylan had his HD28. He had his made specifically with Engelmann, and I'm not sure which one it is, but I'm pretty sure it's the one that has the that he still uses sometimes. It's got one of the early ones with a tortoise pickguard, and was made with Engelmann at his request. And it's very good. It's certainly good for strumming. And it is similar to Sitka, but it's not. I'll be curious to hear. I'd love to see the comments of people who are familiar enough with similar guitars made with Sitka and made with Engelmann to hear their opinions in the comments section on the YouTube version of this podcast.
Well, I'll be honest, Spoon, I'm peeking at the spec sheet while you're talking. Is there anything you want to mention about the fingerboard or the headstock or the neck?
Well, yeah, there is. I forgot one thing. It's funny you should say that, because I forgot that to say when we're comparing necks. This is a 45, so it's got a bound neck. And that binding, by the way, is antique white, similar that's being used on all the rosewood Martins these days. And it's got a bound neck. And I am a believer in that makes the feel of the neck different. It does feel different in the hand, I feel. If you're playing in the exact same guitar, like back in the vintage series days, or now in the standard series days, the neck on a 45 and the neck on a 28, they don't feel the same to me, and I'm not exactly sure what it is about the hand coming across that binding. So I just wanted to point that out to people. It's got a bound neck. But the other cool thing is on the 45 that just like the pickguard, the head plate on the headstock is also ebony. So that really helps with this overall black and white, grayscale, black and white photo kind of looking motif. And it's got, of course, the Martin logo is in pearl as well. So that's, it's not just a 45, it's definitely a special 45 styling for this John Mayer OM45 that's celebrating the 20th anniversary of his first signature model.
And speaking of gray, before we talk about the elephant in the room, the price of this thing, I'm just really curious to see what you think, Spoon. A lot of people are going to say, since it's a signature model, it's going to carry a way heavier price tag than it should. But if you tried to spec out a custom shop 45 right now for yourself, even if it wasn't a limited run, and you wanted to use Guatemalan and you wanted to use Engelman, wouldn't you be getting close to this price tag anyway?
Probably. I would think that's the one thing about having custom shop models will give you that advantage of you're getting this for less than if you had spec'd out a guitar with this. However, there is a premium for the signature model, and just to remind people that unlike most companies, Martin never gave guitars to celebrities until they started the signature model series, and they get one guitar. And then they have to buy the others, probably at a discount. And then they also, in exchange for them doing that, Martin insists that a portion of the profits go to a charity. And then they allow the artist to pick the charity of their choice. And so this definitely goes, that's factored in to the price tag. In addition to just the exclusivity of having an artist signature model. So the artist is not getting any money from this at all, and other than he's getting one free guitar out of it, and the profits, a percentage of the profits go to the charity of his choice. And he's got two of them this time. So in addition to the OM 45 John Mayer 20th anniversary, there's also the OMJM John Mayer's 20th anniversary. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I trust we can both agree that was a very healthy wrap-up of the 20th anniversary OM45 from John Mayer. We're soon going to talk about the OMJM 20th anniversary guitar. What say we pause right in the center this time and play a friendly game of 20 questions?
I think that's a great idea. So let me think of one. Because I had a couple I was thinking about doing at some point. So the way we play this game is one of us thinks up a Martin guitar that's currently in production and available for sale. And the other one has 20 questions to try to guess what that model is. And that can include up to 3 actual naming of a model. So this time, the smart guy is going to be guessing, and that would be Maury Rutch. And the wise guy is got a guitar in his mind, a Martin guitar that's currently available to be ordered by dealers and still in production, or at least on the website in the what we call the catalog. So 20 questions on the clock now.
Does this guitar have a gray sunburst?
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
Nope, I'm not kidding you.
Wow,
So
are you
that narrows
lazy?
it down to 2 questions. I thought by saying what I said, I would completely fool you. Okay, go ahead. That's one guess.
I'm playing with house money, so I'm going to ask, is this the Martin OM45 John Mayer anniversary?
No!
Damn it!
In your face, Flanders.
Is this the OMJM 20th anniversary model?
Yes, it is.
God.
It's a new record. New record, 3 guesses to get the OMJM 20th anniversary model. I double-crossed myself.
All right, enough shenanigans. Let's get back to business. We have another 20th anniversary guitar to talk about, equally as gray. And I'd like to ask you, what do you think of the new... Let me ask you a 2-part question. Spoon, what do you think of the new 20th anniversary OMJM? And are you surprised that it's still simple dovetail?
I guess I was, because I didn't know if they ultimately were going to come out with something that was more akin to the original OM28 John Mayer, which had the traditional dovetail neck joint and the traditional, that traditional standard series construction. And they did not. They chose to basically present a special limited version of the OMJM, which is still hugely popular. And frankly, I know there's lots of people who say they can't hear the difference between the dovetail and the simple dovetail. And I have to say the simple dovetail is definitely a greatly improved neck joint compared to the M&T, which is still available on guitars from Navajoa. And anybody who remembers the old 1 series and the old Rhodes series and others that, the old Aura series that had that neck, they still make really good guitars, and there's plenty of professional instruments out there with what Martin calls the M&T neck joint. But I do think it sounds different. I do think you don't get as full a sound, and I think you get kind of a separation. You get a very vibrant treble at the top, and you get less of an undertone, and they're not as well married together. So it, to my ear, sounds more like a bolt-on neck than a traditional dovetail neck joint. The simple dovetail neck joint sounds a lot more like a traditional dovetail neck joint. It just doesn't have as much mass from the neck. The dovetail itself is not nearly as big and wide, and so you don't have the same surface areas involved when they're transferring energy from the neck to the body and the neck block and all that. Another big thing about that is the simple dovetail neck joint has a solid neck block, solid SIPO neck block. That's a big difference from the old, and even I think the M&T necks now have a solid SIPO neck block. They no longer have a plywood neck block, and that was a big difference maker in, as far as I'm concerned, in tone production in the old days of the M&T neck joint. So that all being said, this has a simple dovetail neck joint. It is identical to the OMJM with the exception of the gray top, as far as I can see. If there's anything slightly different about the fingerboard inlays, I don't remember because I haven't seen it yet in person to see if it is identical, but I'm pretty sure it is identical. It has a black pickguard, and it has a rosewood faceplate. So the major differences between the two are the faceplate is rosewood instead of ebony. I don't think the headstock logo is as fancy. The inlay. The fretboard is much simpler and more and like the OMJM, and it doesn't have a bound neck. It doesn't have the fantastic abalone pearl all around the edges. It doesn't have an ebony pickguard. It has a black pickguard that does not get this special platinum-looking trim, and so forth. So it's really about the burst. But it still makes it limited. It's still a limited edition, only available this year. And for people who love the John Mayer models or just love the look of it, this is your opportunity to have a much more affordable John Mayer signature model, and that is still a limited edition 20th anniversary model.
So I have to tell you, and I'll go back and proofread after this, after we're done editing. I did see one video somewhere on YouTube yesterday where they put up a little bit of a chart, and that YouTuber, at least he thought he saw that the newer version of the OMJM 20th has different bracing than the original. I'm thinking they're both still 5/16, right?
Okay, the reality is that the spec sheet on the 20th anniversary of the OMJM just says 5/16 inch for bracing, but it still has 1/4 inch tone bars, so it's identical to the OMJM. A lot of people don't know that the original 1930s OMs have a 5/16 inch X brace, but all the little braces around the X brace, the ones that go across the top, the ones that are off to the side where the X crosses, those are all 1/4 inch braces. And when Martin brought the OMs back in the 70s and 80s, they just went with straight 1/4 inch bracing because they wanted to get the top as responsive as possible. They knew it was a thicker top than they used in the 1930s. But the fact is the OMJM and the OMJM 20th anniversary both have 5/16 inch X brace surrounded by 1/4 inch tone bars, but that just wasn't added to the spec sheet.
Aha. I always knew you would know.
Now, The OM45 does have 1/4-inch OM bracing. So that has the same bracing that you get on the OM28V or the old John Mayer, original OM28 John Mayer signature model. So that may also be where some people are confused. These two signature models do not have the exact same bracing.
Well, all this talk about these two great new models, I cannot wait to hear what these things sound like in your hands. Promise us you're going to give us an in-hand review as soon as you can.
I'm certainly looking forward to doing exactly that. Now, can you tell me the answer to the trivia question? Because I do not remember. What feature did we leave out of 2 podcasts ago?
The feature that Spoon forgot to do 2 podcasts ago, and if I'm being really honest, last week as well, we did not tell our loyal listeners the 7th reason to buy a Blue Ridge.
Hey-o! Oh, good heavens. Okay, the number 7 reason to own a Blue Ridge guitar is these beautiful top quality soft shell cases. These things are just so successfully designed that I own one, and I don't even own a Blue Ridge guitar, and it's my main travel case now. These things have beautiful water resistant, they don't call it waterproof, but it's as waterproof as any case I've ever had, and beautiful faux leather. It looks like tan leather. I've had strangers come up to me and ask me if that's real leather. It's just gorgeous. It has a really strong, secure zipper with canvas around the edges of the zipper, and a really nice padded handle that's really securely put in there. The most comfortable backpack straps of any guitar case I've ever had. It's the first guitar case I ever wore as a backpack on the shoulders, where I literally forget I have it on. Nicely padded. It's got a little sort of lift handle in between the 2 cases that just looks like a little strip of leather, but you can put your hand under it and haul the case that way, pick it up. It has a really big pouch for music books and all kinds of stuff, and above that is a smaller pouch that's big enough for any guitar pedal. You might be able to fit 2 small pedals in there, plus all kinds of other things, and that's not even talking about the nice inside. So the nice padding on the inside. In fact, I got mine right here. I think they're wonderful. It has a Blue Ridge script logo down at the bottom of the main pouch, but it's not big and garish. It's very tastefully done. And I think they're tremendous. Now, the lower priced Blue Ridges don't get this case. They get a much simpler version of it, but they're still well made, and they still have a really good zipper. So I just think these. I just love these cases, and I'm probably going to acquire more as soon as I can find a dealer that actually will sell one. So if you're interested in one of these, you may want to reach out to Maury's Music, because they might be willing to let these go without buying a Blue Ridge guitar. But I'm just tickled to death with this case, and I recommend them highly.
Well, nobody wants you tickled to death, but I'm glad you like it, and I'm glad you guys like this episode. Spoon, I want to thank you again, bringing your knowledge of these new Mayers to our loyal listeners, and I want to invite you guys, if you found this episode entertaining, educational, or if you just have a highly suggestible personality, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. We might even read your review on the air. Rutch B writes, "These guys are great, excellent information, and very enjoyable. Can't wait to hear more." Now, Spoon, I've always wanted to say this, even when it's true. Thanks, Mom.
Hi, Barb.
From all of us at Maury's Music, thanks for listening, Mom.
Hear you later.
This has been a presentation of Maury's Music, your trusted source for Martin and Blue Ridge guitars. Find us online at maurysmusic.com.